Captain Richard Holloway's hands weren't what they used to be. At 68, after half a century of military service, his fingers trembled constantly. The young officers at the police department had nicknamed him Shaky. While working as a consultant in the sniper training program, he could hear them whispering behind his back. Could this guy really shoot back in the day? He can't even hold a coffee cup. Why is he still here? None of them imagined that on that Thursday morning, in that dark hour when the city's largest elementary school was taken hostage, the lives of 30 children would depend on those trembling hands. Welcome to Best Honor Stories. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're watching this extraordinary story of courage and forgotten heroism from. And if you believe stories like these deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us preserve them. Riverdale, Massachusetts, September 14th, The morning briefing at the Riverdale Police Department Special Operations Division always started at 7:30 a.m. sharp. Captain Richard Holloway arrived 15 minutes early, as he had every day for the past 5 years since joining the department as a training consultant. He placed his worn leather briefcase on the table and carefully removed his notes for the day's sniper training session. As he reached for his coffee mug, his right hand began to tremble more noticeably than usual. The ceramic mug rattled against the table as he lifted it, spilling a few drops onto his meticulously organized papers. Holloway sighed and used his left hand to steady his right, a technique he'd developed over the past few years as his condition worsened. "Need some help with that, Captain Shaky?" came a voice from the doorway. Officer Mike Davis, 28, leaned against the frame with a smirk. Behind him, 2 other young officers chuckled. "I've got it, thank you." Holloway replied calmly, his voice steady, even if his hands were not. "Sure thing, just looking out for the elderly," Davis said, walking to his seat as the other officers filed in for the briefing. Holloway had heard it all before, the whispers, the jokes, the not-so-subtle suggestions that it was time for him to retire completely. What stung most wasn't the mockery. He'd developed thick skin through decades of military service, but the dismissal of his expertise. None of these young officers seemed interested in what he had to offer beyond the shooting range. Lieutenant Sandra Chen, head of the Special Operations Division, entered the room last and called the meeting to order. "Good morning, everyone. Today we're continuing our advanced sniper positioning drills at the abandoned Carson building. Captain Holloway has prepared the scenarios." She nodded toward Holloway, who stood to address the team. As he lifted his laser pointer to indicate positions on the projected map, the red dot danced wildly across the screen. Someone at the back of the room snickered. "As you can see," Holloway continued, ignoring the reaction, "we'll be focusing on 3 key positions that offer maximum coverage while maintaining concealment. These are the kinds of positions that saved my team in Fallujah back in Davis raised his hand. "With all due respect, Captain, hasn't sniper technology and methodology evolved significantly since then? I mean, our new thermal scopes and ballistic computers pretty much do the hard work for us now." Several officers nodded in agreement. Holloway lowered the pointer. "Technology changes, Officer Davis, but fundamentals don't. When your fancy equipment fails, when conditions aren't ideal, when you've got one shot to save a life, that's when basics matter most." "But that's why we have backups for our backups," Davis countered. "When's the last time you actually took a shot in the field, Captain? Technology has made some of these old-school techniques obsolete." The room fell silent, all eyes on Holloway. His right hand trembled visibly against the table. 4 years, 7 months, and 13 days ago," Holloway said quietly, "and I pray none of you ever have to take the shots I've taken." Lieutenant Chen cleared her throat. "All right, let's stick to today's training. Gear up and meet at the transport in 15. As the officers filed out, Holloway gathered his notes. Lieutenant Chen approached him. "Richard, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Sandra, just the usual." She lowered her voice. "Look, I value your experience, you know that. But maybe Davis has a point about some of the newer methodologies. The department's pushing for more tech-forward training, so I'm becoming obsolete too," Holloway asked with a wry smile. "That's not what I meant," Chen said. "But we might need to adjust your role a bit. Maybe focus more on the theoretical side rather than the practical demonstrations." Holloway nodded, understanding what wasn't being said. His tremor was getting worse, and everyone had noticed. What had started as an occasional shake 5 years ago had progressed to a near-constant tremor. The doctors called it essential tremor. Not Parkinson's, but not curable either. "I understand," he said. "I'll adapt." The training session at the Carson building went as expected. Holloway observed from the ground floor as the officers rotated through sniper positions on the upper levels. His job was to evaluate their concealment techniques and positioning choices. "Davis, you're too exposed at that window angle," he called into the radio. "Shift 3 feet to your left. Visibility is better here," Davis argued back, "and so is your chance of being spotted. Remember, concealment before comfort." He heard Davis mutter something before complying. Through his binoculars, Holloway watched the young officer reluctantly reposition. After the session, as the team packed up their gear, Holloway overheard Davis talking to a group of officers. "Can't even hold his binoculars steady. Did you see them shaking? And he's critiquing my stance?" Davis laughed. "My grandfather has the same tremor. He's not allowed to carve the Thanksgiving turkey anymore." The group erupted in laughter. Falling silent only when they noticed Holloway standing nearby, he said nothing, just continued checking off items on his clipboard with his trembling hand. On the ride back to the station, Holloway sat alone at the back of the transport van. He looked down at his hands, these hands that had once been steady enough to hit a target at 1,200 meters, that had saved countless lives in 4 different combat zones. Now they betrayed him daily, a constant reminder that time marches on, especially for warriors. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter. "Dad, don't forget your doctor's appointment tomorrow. Love you." He smiled. At least someone still depended on him. The next morning, Holloway was at his desk reviewing training reports when the station erupted in sudden activity. Officers rushed toward the briefing room, and emergency radio traffic increased dramatically. Lieutenant Chen appeared at his door, her face grim. "Richard, we've got a situation. Riverside Elementary. Armed hostage scenario." Holloway stood immediately. "Details?" 4 armed men entered during morning assembly. They're holding approximately 30 children and 2 teachers in the auditorium. They've barricaded the doors and are demanding the release of a prisoner from state. Demands. They want Peter Kozlov released from maximum security, the Russian mob enforcer. Holloway nodded grimly. Kozlov was notorious, responsible for at least a dozen murders before they finally put him away 3 years ago. These were serious people. SWAT is mobilizing now, Chen continued. "I want you in the command center. Your experience." She was interrupted by Officer Davis rushing in. "Lieutenant, sniper team is gearing up. We've got positions identified around the school." Chen nodded. "Good. Get moving." As Davis turned to leave, he paused, glancing at Holloway with something between pity and embarrassment. "We've got this, Captain," he said, not unkindly. "Maybe you should handle the comms." After he left, Holloway turned to Chen. "He's right. I should stay in command." Chen studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Command center in 5. The situation at Riverside Elementary deteriorated quickly. The hostage-takers had issued a deadline, 2 hours to release Kozlov, or they'd start executing children. The governor had already made it clear, no deals with terrorists. In the mobile command center parked 2 blocks from the school, Holloway watched the feeds from tactical cameras positioned around the perimeter. 4 sniper teams were in place, including Davis, who had the best angle on the auditorium's windows. The lead hostage-taker had been identified as Viktor Baranov, a known associate of Kozlov with military training and a history of violence. Thermal imaging showed the hostages gathered in the center of the auditorium, with the 4 gunmen positioned strategically around them. "We've got no clean shots," reported Davis over the radio. "They're keeping the hostages as shields, and they're staying away from the windows." The SWAT commander, Captain Reynolds, pounded his fist on the table. "We can't wait them out. That deadline is real." Holloway studied the thermal images carefully, noticing a pattern. Every 12 minutes, Baranov moves to the east window to check something outside. It's brief, maybe 3 seconds, but it's consistent. 3 seconds isn't enough time to acquire and take a shot, said Reynolds. It could be, Holloway said quietly, if the shooter was already dialed in, already knew exactly where to aim. The room fell silent. That window is 380 meters from our nearest position, said Chen. Through trees with a crosswind. Even with 3 seconds, it's practically impossible. I've made harder shots, Holloway said. Reynolds and Chen exchanged glances. Richard, Chen said gently, your hands. My hands shake, yes, but my mind doesn't. Holloway pointed to the screen. I know exactly where he'll be, exactly when. I can prepare the shot in advance. This isn't a training exercise, Reynolds said. We're talking about children's lives, which is exactly why you need someone who can make this shot, Holloway replied firmly. I'm not asking. I'm telling you I can do this. Davis's voice came over the radio again. I can try for the shot when he appears next, but I can't guarantee. No, Holloway interrupted. It's too risky. If you miss, they'll start killing hostages immediately. He turned to Reynolds. Let me set up at position 3. If I can't make the shot, we haven't lost anything. Your other teams stay ready. Reynolds hesitated, then nodded slowly. Gear him up. Position 3 was a maintenance room in an apartment building across from the school. Holloway moved slowly and methodically as he set up his rifle. An old Macmillan Tech 338 that he'd used for years. Unlike the newer models the department used, this one was familiar, an extension of himself. You sure about this, Captain? Asked the SWAT officer who'd escorted him to the position. Holloway didn't answer. He was focused entirely on his preparation. He adjusted the bipod, checked the scope, and loaded a single round into the chamber. His hands trembled as he worked, but there was a rhythm to the tremor that he'd learned to anticipate. Command, this is Holloway at position 3. I'm set up. Copy that, came Chen's voice. Baranov's next window check should be in approximately 2 minutes. Holloway settled behind the rifle, pressing his cheek against the stock. He controlled his breathing, feeling his heart rate slow. Years of training took over, creating a bubble of calm around him. 1 minute, said Chen. Holloway closed his eyes briefly, saying a silent prayer, not for steady hands, but for perfect timing. 30 seconds. He opened his eyes and gazed through the scope, fixing on the exact spot where Baranov's head would appear. His right hand trembled against the trigger guard. Movement at the window, came Davis's voice over the radio. He's approaching. Holloway took a deep breath, held it, and as he began to exhale, he saw Baranov's face appear at the window. In that instant, during the perfect stillness between heartbeats, Holloway's finger squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder. Through the scope, he saw the window shatter, and Baranov drop from view. Target down, came multiple voices over the radio. Confirmed hit. Inside the auditorium, chaos erupted. The other hostage-takers, suddenly leaderless, hesitated, just long enough for the SWAT team to breach the doors. Within minutes, it was over. All hostages safe, all terrorists neutralized or captured. Holloway remained at his position, slowly lowering his rifle. His hands were shaking worse than ever, the adrenaline amplifying his tremor. But it didn't matter anymore. Back at the station, the mood was celebratory. The hostage rescue had gone perfectly. No civilian casualties, all terrorists either dead or in custody. News crews were gathered outside, and the commissioner was giving a press conference. Holloway sat alone in the break room, a cup of coffee cooling untouched before him. His hands trembled too much to risk picking it up. The door opened and Davis walked in with several other officers. They stopped when they saw Holloway. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Then Davis stepped forward, standing at attention. Captain Holloway, sir. Holloway looked up. We. Davis struggled for words. That shot, 380 meters, through trees, with that crosswind. I couldn't have made it. None of us could, added another officer. Davis extended his hand. I was wrong, sir. I'm sorry. Holloway looked at the offered hand, then at his own trembling one. With deliberate movement, he reached out and shook Davis's hand. The fundamentals never change, Officer Davis, he said quietly. Remember that. Davis nodded solemnly. Yes, sir. As the officers filed out, Lieutenant Chen entered. The commissioner wants you at the press conference, she said. Holloway shook his head. No. This wasn't about recognition. Then what was it about? He looked at his trembling hands. Proving something to myself, I suppose. Chen sat down across from him. Richard, I'm reinstating you as lead instructor for the sniper program. Full authority. With these hands, he held them up, the tremor visible. Those hands just saved 30 children, she said firmly. I don't care if they shake. What matters is what you know, what you can teach. She paused. Unless you'd rather retire. Holloway thought about it, then slowly shook his head. No, not yet. 6 months later, the Riverdale Police Department's sniper training facility was officially renamed the Captain Richard Holloway Precision Shooting Center. At the dedication ceremony, officers from across the state came to pay their respects to the shaky sniper, as he was now affectionately known. The department had also implemented Holloway's new training program, which focused on fundamentals first, technology second. Every officer now had to qualify with manual calculations before using ballistic computers. Officer Davis, now Sergeant Davis, had become Holloway's most dedicated student. The thing about Captain Holloway, Davis told a new recruit who asked about the tremor, is that he taught us it's not about having steady hands, it's about knowing when to take the shot. At the back of the room, Holloway stood watching, his hands trembling as they always did. But now, when young officers looked at those hands, they didn't see weakness. They saw the hands that made the impossible shot, the hands that saved 30 children when no one else could. At Best Honor Stories, we believe that true heroes aren't always recognized by their strength, but by their ability to overcome weakness. Captain Richard Holloway's story reminds us that experience and courage can triumph even when our bodies begin to fail us. Have you ever known someone like Captain Holloway, someone overlooked or underestimated, who proved their worth when it mattered most? Share their story in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please subscribe to help us preserve these moments of extraordinary courage that might otherwise be forgotten. Until next time, remember, true marksmanship isn't measured by the steadiness of your hands, but by the steadiness of your resolve.